Hello, welcome to the Manasplained podcast. I'm Connor. Today I'll be talking about the deck I built for Sunastian Falconer. So Sunastian is a 5-mana 4/4 where you can tap to add 2 to your mana pool. So Sunastian is also a human shaman, which makes him a 5-mana soul ring. Now, that's really bad. Paying 5 mana to get 2 mana back is like a horrible rate. If you're spending 5 mana, you expect to get like 3 or 4 mana back, really. Even some 3 mana creatures will give you 3 mana back, or even more than that. So Sunastian Falconer is really bad. But because it's a human shaman, and because it has a mana ability, I decided to lean into that a little bit and go shaman tribal. And I tried to find some cards that could help use Sunastian's ability to help ramp some stuff out quicker, or have some activated ability so that you can actually use the mana. Also, the 4 power and 4 toughness is kind of relevant for some cards. So Sunastian at face value is really bad, but you can use a couple things from his card to kind of help give you some key insights on how to build the deck, or help you find some cards that actually care about certain things. So yeah, I think he is very terrible, but you can find cool cards that can synergize with different aspects of the card, and that's what we're all looking for. So I hope you like the deck. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and please comment. I love talking with you down in the comments after these videos go live. It's my favorite part about making these videos. And also the liking and subscribing helps grow the channel, which I also appreciate so much. So for the deck breakdown, we have 30 theme cards, 4 synergy, 6 token makers, 6 anthems, and 3 protection cards. The 30 theme cards are shaman, so I decided to go shaman tribal for this deck. Having 30 of them is quite a bit. It really helps with all the cards that care about shamans. Being able to hit them that consistently is really important. And then the rest of these cards, a lot of shamans fit into multiple categories, which is great. They can be token makers, they can be anthems, they can synergize in some way. Like a lot of the shaman really do that, which is fantastic. And even some of them are protection as well. Like, yeah, the shamans are a very diverse group of cards in Magic. They do a lot of different things. And because of that, they're very versatile, and they really help make the deck feel more like whole and complete, which is really awesome. And then for the rest of the deck list, 11 draw, 16 ramp, 12 removal, 1 board wipe, and 36 lands. I'm really happy with the draw, ramp, removal. The 16 ramp might be a bit overkill because our commanders also ramp, but being able to constantly get big expensive stuff out, or activating abilities of stuff on board, is important, because we're going to want to be spending a lot of mana every turn, and that's how we're going to get value out of this deck, because our commander already gives us 2 extra mana, so being able to utilize all this mana is going to be really important. And then the removal and the draw really just help keep the deck humming along and help dealing with key threats that might be able to hose us. The 1 board wipe, I think having a board wipe is really important. It's easy to cut in a lot of decks, but there are more and more cards these days that have ward, or just hard to get rid of, usually because of ward or something like that. So because of that, board wipes, they also get around shroud and hexproof and stuff like that. So yeah, wipes are really important. And then 36 lands, I felt comfortable running lower than 38 lands here because the commander is ramp and we have such a high amount of ramp. I think that's okay. But all of that combines to 27 crossover cards, which is a ton. All of these typal decks, these kindred decks, tend to have a lot higher of a crossover count anyways. That's because when a card fits into the theme, where the theme is just a creature type, it makes it so there's a lot of cross contamination there, because if it's removal and a shaman, it's now a crossover card. So because of that, it does bloat this number a bit, but I think if we were going to look at this and kind of trim it down, realistically this is more of a 15-ish area for crossover cards, but that's still amazing. Like anything more than 10 is where you want to be. So having around 15 true total, like if you add it all up and you really boil it down, 15 would be like the true number, and that's awesome. That's great to see. So like I said before, the theme is shamans, and with these typal decks, because I have such a large number of theme cards, and they're all going to be dragons, shaman, warlock, whatever they're going to be, I don't want to keep showing them because they're going to show up a lot if you decide to repeat them because of the 27 different crossover cards. So let me know down in the comments. Do you want me to just show them once each time during the theme category? Or say if it's a removal piece, do you want me to show it in the theme category and then in the removal category again later? I don't really know how I should do that, but let me know what you think down in the comments. So to start off, the shaman category here, we have some shamans that care about damage. Stigma Lasher, if it ever gets to connect to a player, it does whenever it deals damage. So if you were able to put like a Viridian Longbow or some kind of pinger effect on this, it's a lot stronger. But whenever it deals damage to a player, that player can't gain life for the rest of the game. That's incredible. It also means that if someone steals our Stigma Lasher and hits us with it, we're also hooped. But Stigma Lasher, very great card because of that. It hoses some decks because if they have incidental life gain or a life gain theme, just being able to turn that off for the rest of the game is kind of crazy. And it'll also put a clock on the game because people aren't able to gain life. Everyone's just going to be constantly losing life, and it'll make games run quicker, which sometimes people like. Some people like shorter games instead of the longer 3-hour 4 control deck games that are just brutal sometimes. And to help with that, even again, we have Heartless Hitsugu. This card is very popular because it halves everybody's life total. There is many a deck that one-shot with this. If you have damage doublers that double its damage to other players and not you, it's easy to make this one-shot your opponents. But here it's just a really strong shaman that can help dish out a ton of damage, help get our opponents low, because we're playing such a high creature density deck. Being able to get our opponents low to finish them off with our board full of shamans is what we're going to be trying to do. Up next, we have some shaman token makers. Kiki Mirror Breaker, another very popular, well-known shaman. There's no infinite combos with him in this deck because I don't like infinite combos. But Kiki's just here to help get some bonus utility if we have some creatures that care about entering the battlefield or having combat triggers. We can use Kiki to make a copy of it, get those triggers off. The token then gets sacrificed at the beginning of the next end step, but we can do this every turn to get some more ETBs. Say like we have a creature that destroys something when it enters the battlefield, or we have another creature that draws us a card when it does the thing. Kiki helps us get a lot of value out of those creatures, which is super awesome. And then Delina Wild Mage, same kind of thing. Whenever it attacks, or whenever she attacks, you get to choose target creature control and then roll a d20, and you get to make some tapped and attacking copies of the creature, which is great. You lose the attack triggers with this because they enter the battlefield tapped and attacking. But again, this will re-trigger enter the battlefield effects, and we just want to be able to dish out a ton of damage. So Delina being able to get some more tokens out, be able to hit more opponents is awesome. Some other token makers we got in the deck are Dragon Master Outcast. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 6 or more lands, you make a 5/5 dragon creature token with flying, which for 1 mana, that is ridiculous. You do need 6 lands, so you need to be wary of that. Having this guy in your opening hand can be incredible, but if you don't have able to get 6 lands out, this card can be dead. So finding it a bit later into the game is honestly better, but it being 1 mana is absolutely incredible. Up next, got True's Soul Zealot. Can sacrifice some of our creatures to make 4/1 black skeletons with menace that are tapped and attacking. A 4/1 with menace is going to be really hard to block. It's going to be able to kill a lot of things. We are sacrificing a creature to get this, but if we already have a token out, like Rakamar making a 3/1 red elemental creature token with haste, we can sack that turn to a 4/1 with menace, which is just an upgrade. And maybe we have some other incidental creatures out there that just have ATBs and they're not that important, so we can sack them to gut to get a better attacker out there to really put the pressure on. And then Rakamar, 4 mana, and then you pay 1 mana to make a 3/1 with haste. That's just great. It having haste too, she's able to get a body out immediately, and being able to do that every turn can really put pressure on. It's kind of like a lightning bolt every turn almost, because if people are going to block, it's going to deal 3 damage to their creatures, and if they have to chump block, that's going to be fine. Rocketmare just also helps really put the pressure on. Here are some absolutely amazing ramp cards. Goblin and Archomancer makes all of our red and green stuff cost 1 less to cast. Bosk Banneret makes our Tree Folk and Shaman spells cost 1 less to cast. And then Elvish Piper can just throw a creature from her hand onto the battlefield. No, you don't have to pay any mana for it. You just pay 1 green, and you tap Elvish Piper, you throw a creature onto the field. It's kind of like Sneak Attack a little bit, except no haste and no sacrifice. So if you just want to get a creature out there, like a Goblin Archmancer or a Bosk Banneret for 1 green mana instead of the 2, that's the lowest it's going to be. There are some bit more expensive creatures in this deck that with Elvish Piper you're going to be able to get out super easily, and it's very strong when you do that. It not having haste means it's going to be a ire for removal, so you're going to probably cast Elvish Piper, and there's a good chance it's going to eat the next removal spell. But if it ever gets to stick around, just 1 activation of this is going to save you a ton of mana and going to help you cheat out some really big stuff onto the board. Up next, we have just some other cool shaman. Essence Warden is a green Soul Sister, which I didn't know existed until making this deck, which is really cool. The Soul Sisters are Soul Warden and Soul's Attendant, I think. I can't remember what the other one's name. But they say whenever a creature comes into play, you gain a life. and they're absolutely amazing. They both cost 1 white mana and are 1/1s, and they're known as the Soul Sisters because they go in mono white decks because they just gain you so much life, because it's whenever any creature enters the battlefield you gain life. I didn't know green had their own Soul Sister, and yeah, Essence Warden seems absolutely amazing. Being able to gain you life whenever the tokens enter, or your other shaman enter, whenever, if you're one of your opponents playing a token deck, gain a bunch of life with it. I mean, the Soul Sisters are phenomenal cards for a reason, and this being in green seems like an absolutely amazing effect. And then Gigantomancer, costing 8 mana, very good target to cheat in with our Elvish Piper, but then you can pay 1 mana, and target creature you control becomes a 7/7 until the end of turn, which is ridiculous. That makes our commander a 7/7, so 3 hits with that, and that's commander damage. But more than likely, we're going to be tapping our commander for the 2 generic mana to activate Gigantomancer twice, so we can get some stuff to be 7/7s, including Gigantomancer itself, making for some really good attacks, being able to deal a ton of damage, maybe kill some stuff on board. Yeah, Gigantomancer here is an absolutely amazing card. Up next are a bunch of removal goblins. So Lightning Crafter, it champions a goblin or a shaman, so when it comes into play, you have to exile another goblin or shaman until a Lightning Crafter leaves the battlefield, and it just basically gets exiled under Lightning Crafter, and then Lightning Crafter dies, the other one comes back. But Lightning Crafter is really good because you just tap it and you get to Lightning Bolt something. It's just it's a Lightning Bolt on a stick. You just get to use over and over and over. Can deal great damage to opponents' faces, or can help deal a ton of damage to creatures on board. Can help remove pesky creatures like Esper Sentinel, or if people have really powerful commanders out that are 1, 2, or 3 toughness, this can help deal with them. Yeah, Lightning Crafter can just really deal with a lot of problematic stuff, and you love to see it. No Mage Shepherd, tap 4 untap creatures you control, destroy target artifact or enchantment. So this is great if we're making tokens. You only need 3 other creatures because Null Mage can tap herself without needing haste, because Null Mage will be tapping the things instead of Null Mage having like a tap activated ability. It's a weird distinction, but it gets around Summoning Sickness, which is amazing. Silverback Elder makes all of our cast creature spells, when their cast triggers, we get an effect, which is destroy target artifact or enchantment. Look at the top 5 cards of your library, put a land from among them onto the battlefield, tap the rest of them by your library in a random order, or you gain 4 life. The ramp there is, it's only looking at the top 5, and with 36 lands, that's not going to hit every time. It's going to hit very consistently, but it's not going to hit every time. But what we're probably going to be doing is either destroying an artifact or enchantment or gaining life. We already have ramp in our command zone, so just getting ramp off the Silverback Elder isn't really going to be good enough. We're going to want it for the removal so we can control our opponents a bit, and the life gain so that we can get more life while we're constantly draining our opponents with combat. And speaking of combat, Sunder Shaman destroys artifacts or enchantments through combat. It can only be blocked by, it can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. And when it deals combat damage to a player, destroy target artifact or enchantment that player controls. It being a 5/5 for 4 mana is great. The cost is pretty prohibitive, and our commander cannot help pay for this because it has no generic in it. But Sunder Shaman, if we can make token copies of it, its swinging in is going to be great for dealing with problematic artifacts and enchantments, and it being a 5/5 will make it hard to block as well. Here are some of those ETB creatures I was talking about that are great to copy because their enter the battlefield effects are great. Woodfall Primus destroys target non-creature permanent. This can hit lands. Don't be that guy that hits basics or just mana lands. If you're going to Woodfall Primus a land, make sure it's something like a Field of the Dead or something problematic. Don't just hit somebody's command tower. That's mean. But yeah, Woodfall Primus being able to hit any non-creature permanent is fantastic. This can hit Planeswalkers as well, which green, unless you can get combat damage through, if they have chump blockers, it's really hard to deal with them in green. So Woodfall Primus also being able to hit them is amazing. And this is another phenomenal target for our Elvish Piper, being able to just pay 1 green and slap it onto the battlefield. It also has Persist, so if it would die, it comes back with a -1/-1 counter on it. And if we have a way to get a 1/1 counter on it, then the -1/-1 counter will go away, and basically we can have this enter the battlefield over and over. If we have this, can go infinite with the ability to put 1/1 counters on it, and a sack outlet, you can destroy everybody's lands, destroy all their non-creature permanents. It's kind of gross, but like I said before, I don't do infinites because I'm not a fan of them. So this is just a really good value creature to be able to deal with our opponent's stuff. If they try to remove it, they'll also lose something in return, which is a great deal there for us. And then again, Reclamation Sage, just another great shaman. It's run in so many decks because it's just a good 2/1 blocker that also destroys an artifact or enchantment on ETB. It's just a very solid card. Up next are some top of the library cards. So Prophetic Flame Speaker is a 1/3 with double strike and trample. If we can Gigantomancer this guy, that'll be a 7/7 with double strike and trample, which will be insane. But whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library, you may play it this turn. So say we didn't play a land for turn, we deal combat damage with this guy, we can then play our land for turn, which is great. Or, for example, we can get some Shaman, start casting them, maybe hit a removal spell off the top. Who knows? Prophetic Flame Speaker really help with the card advantage there. And then Realm Walker lets us cast Shaman off the top of our library and is a Shaman themselves because they have Changeling. Both of these cards will help us just grind it out, get some more card advantage, and hopefully be able to dish it out. Realm Walker, again, it's weird because we're only running 30 Shaman in the deck. 1 in every 3 cards will be castable off the top with Realm Walker, but that's a third of a card. And we get to look at the top card of our library at any time, which can be useful, letting us know what our next draw is going to be. And I think it just is pretty useful here as a Shaman. I think it's going to be very helpful, helping rip some of the Shaman off the top. Up next are some more card draw cards, or like card advantage-y cards. Conspiracy Theorist and Seasoned Pyromancer are not card advantage. They make you discard and then draw. So it's card selection, not card advantage. But Conspiracy Theorist can let you cast the cards you discard. If it's a land, you can't play it. But if they're non-land cards, you may exile them and then cast them. So it is kind of card advantage if you can get the cast off, because if you're going to cast it from your hand anyway, it's turning it into a cantrip as well, which is great to see. Conspiracy Theorist is very cool for that. And if you have other ways to discard cards, you won't have to pay the one and he won't have to attack. It's just a very cool effect. And then Seasoned Pyromancer, when it enters the battlefield, you may discard 2 cards and then draw 2 cards for each non-land card discarded this way. Make a 1/1. So it also makes tokens. It's good fodder for Gut, True Soul Zealot, and they also make just good chump blockers. But you can also exile Seasoned Pyromancer from our graveyard to make 2 more tokens. But be able to filtering through 2 cards, say we're hitting too many lands, we're not hitting enough lands, or we're just looking for an answer, being able to throw this out there for 3 mana to discard 2 and then draw 2 can be helpful. And then again, the trump blockers are just nice to have. But Eternal Witness, when it enters the battlefield, return target card from our graveyard to our hand. This is an absolutely amazing card here because we have ways to make copies of it and get its effect more than once with either Delina or with, oh my gosh, Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker. So yeah, Eternal Witness is probably one of the better ETB cards in this deck because we can get back our dead Shaman from the graveyard, recast them, maybe get some removal spells back, whatnot. Yeah, Eternal Witness, absolutely amazing. And then these last 2 slides are some ramp Shaman. So Oracle of Meldiah lets us play an additional land for turn and lets us play land off the top of our library. Again, since we're only running 36, 1 in every 3 cards, essentially, we'll get to play a land from the top of our library. And we have to play with our card of our library revealed, which kind of sucks. But it's more information for us. Yes, it's more information for our opponents, but I don't think that's going to be too big of a problem because, I mean, I don't think we're going to be holding up anything sneaky. Our deck's pretty apparent with what it's doing, which is just slamming Shaman on the board and hoping to deal combat damage to our opponents. And then Sakura Tribe Elder is a Shaman, and when you can sack it, search for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. Sakura Tribe Elder is absolutely amazing if we have a Kiki-Jiki out, because we can tap the Kiki-Jiki to make a Sakura Tribe Elder whenever. We can do it on the end step before our turn. We can do it on someone else's turn to make a chump blocker that we can then sacrifice to get the basic. Yes, and then also getting this back with Eternal Witness, Sakura Tribe Elder, absolutely great card. One of the best ramp spells in my opinion because it's also able to chump block and a great target for reanimation. And then lastly are all the Shaman that tap for mana. So Whisper of the Wilds taps for a green, but if you control creature power 4 or greater, like our commander, it taps for 2 green. And then Woe's Pathfinder taps for a mana of any color. Sachi taps for 2 green, and gives all of our Shaman the ability to tap for 2 green. So it turns all of our Shaman into mana dorks and makes our commander, instead of tapping for 2 generic mana, tap for 2 green as well. Sachi is absolutely an amazing card here. Shaman of the Forgotten Ways. You can tap it to add 2 mana of any combination of colors to your mana pool, but you can only spend the mana to cast creature spells. But if you have the mana, you can spend 11 and tap it, and each player's life total becomes the number of creatures they control. Activate this ability only if creatures you control have a total power of 8 or greater. So Shaman of the Forgotten Ways can just kill some people if they don't have any creatures or have a low number of creatures, because you can just activate Shaman of the Forgotten Ways, get everyone really low or dead, and then swing in for lethal. yeah, that card is an absolute house. Its effect is very broken. There is a sorcery that does it. I think it's called Biogenesis, maybe. That's banned because the effect is gross. But Shaman's legal, so that's fun. And then finally, Beast Caller Savant. It has haste and taps to add 1 mana of any color to the mana pool, but spend this mana only to cast a creature spell. Again, it's like Shaman, where it's limited, little bit restricted like that, but it has haste, so you can tap it immediately. And we have 30 creatures in the deck, so we're going to be wanting to cast a lot of creatures anyways. So, because we have so many Shaman, 30 is a lot, we want some synergy cards to help go with what we're doing. And a lot of the Shaman, including our commander, tap or have triggered abilities. Like when they attack, do something, or when it enters the battlefield, do something. And so having ways to untap our commander or other Shaman, or ways to capitalize off these triggered abilities, is what you kind of want to be doing here. So that's why I put these synergy cards together. So to start off the synergy category, we have 1,000-Year Elixir, which can let our creatures with activated abilities activate them as though they had haste. It doesn't let them attack, unfortunately, but like our commander, it can tap the turn it enters if we have 1,000-Year out, which is absolutely amazing. Lets us get some of that mana back to use on something else, including activating 1,000-Year Elixir's ability to untap target creature. So 1,000-Year and Mage Right Stone, you do have to spend the 1 mana, so if you have any creatures that only tap for 1 mana, it's not worth it. But, like our commander, tapping for 2 mana, 1,000-Year Elixir and Mage Right Stone can turn that 2 mana into 3 mana, which is great, but more than likely you're going to want to use these to untap our creatures like Kiki Jiki, so that we can get multiple activations of that to get more token copies of creatures, or so that we can get cards like Elvish Piper to untap to put more creatures from our hand onto the battlefield. Card like Seeker of Skybreak here, though, is great for 2 mana. It does have Summoning Sickness because it's a creature, so you can't activate the turn it enters. But it untaps target creature, you don't have to pay any mana for it. So this is great with all of our creatures, that even if they only make 1 mana, because you don't have to spend any mana to untap them, you immediately can just get that mana bonus. Like with our commander, Seeker of Skybreak makes our commander tap for 4, which is what our commander probably should tap for anyways, it being 5 mana and a 4/4 and just kind of a not great card. It tapping for 4 generic should probably be what it does. But yeah, Seeker of Skybreak's absolutely great there. And then Harmonic Prodigy is one of my favorite cards of all time. It doubles the triggered abilities of Wizards and Shaman, which is absolutely incredible. It's so good. I have Harmonic Prodigy in my Gearrag Conclave Exile and my Gavi Nest Warden deck and decks, and oh my god, the amount of crap this lets you double is crazy, because those decks just happen to have Shaman or Wizards in them, especially the Gavi deck. It has so many Wizards in it, and then the commander's a Shaman, so getting a bunch more tokens, drawing more cards, doing whatever is so powerful, and being able to duplicate triggered abilities like ETBs, attack triggers, stuff like that is so strong. So Harmonic Prodigy is probably one of the best cards in the deck, because our stuff is going to activate multiple times, which is insanely broken and such amazing value. So most of the token makers in this deck are Shaman, so you've already seen them. But one card in this deck that isn't a Shaman that make tokens will make Shaman tokens, and that is Molten Echoes. This card is insane. When it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Whenever a non-token creature of the chosen type enters the battlefield, you make a token copy of it. It gains haste, exile at the beginning of the next end step. This card's awesome because we're going to get more ETBs, more attack triggers, dealing tons of damage, duplicating stuff, going off. I love Molten Echoes. It's so good. It's kind of crazy how good it is in ETB stuff decks when you have tons of creatures to do that, or attack triggers decks, because it gives our creature haste by making a token copy with haste, which is honestly better than haste in my opinion. Yeah, Molten Echoes, absolutely awesome card here, especially with so many different cards that care about stuff like this. Oh, it's so good. And with stuff like Gut, True Zealot, having this giving us tokens to be able to sacrifice to him to make a 4/1s, just oh, so good. Just so many good things. I love this card. And I love tokens in general. You'd probably tell from my other videos, so I also love this card. So because we're going wide, we're going to want anthems to help pump up our board with either keywords or power and toughness. So the Anthem category is filled with some cards that do that, and here they are. So, Fervor, Rising of the Day, Hammer of Perforos, Fires of Yavimaya, and Rhythm of the Wild will all give our creatures haste. Rhythm of the Wild gives our non-token creatures haste by giving them Riot. The way Riot works is the creature can enter with either a 1/1 counter or haste. If you remember Woodfall Primes from earlier, That 1/1 counter can be pretty important. But if you just probably more often than not, you're just going to do the haste so you can swing in immediately. But the 1/1 counters can be very good to make our board a bit bigger, make our 1/1s into 2/2s, so on and so forth. Rhythm of the Wild, it's a great card. Also, creature spells you control can't be countered. Form of protection, I really like it. I try to put Rhythm of the Wild in almost all my Gruul decks, because if you're making a Gruul deck, haste or 1/1 counters are often not a bad extra thing to put in the deck, because usually the deck will probably care about something like that. So yeah, Rhythm of the Wild, absolutely amazing card. Rising of the Day is interesting because it also gives our legendary creatures +1/+0, so it makes our commander a 5/4. We have some other legendary shaman in the deck, so Rising of the Day works great with them. But one of the biggest cards in the deck here is probably Vanquisher's Banner, giving all of our creatures +1/+1, and whenever we cast one of those shaman, we get to draw a card. So it makes all of our shaman cantrip, makes them all +1/+1 bigger. Vanquisher's Banner is an absolutely amazing card, one of the best Typal or Kindred cards of all time, in my opinion. I just feel like it goes in almost every single Kindred or Typal deck because it's just so powerful. Making them cantrip and making them bigger is so good. So because our commander kind of sucks and really isn't a keystone of the deck, we didn't need a lot of protection, but we still want some because they can offer other things than just protecting our commander that could be useful. So our protection cards, Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot, gives us haste, so we can get our attack triggers immediately. If we can slap them on our commander, we can ramp immediately. Lightning Greaves is great because the equip 0, you can pass it around, get all of your mana dorks haste just to able to activate them. Love to see it. But then Rhythm of the Wild, oh my god, I already sung its praises. It's a great protection piece, great haste enabler, great 1/1 counters enabler. Yeah, all these cards here, they have their role to play. Swiftfoot Boost is definitely the worst of all of them because you do have to pay that 1 to equip it, but it still gives hexproof and haste to our most important thing. So we have our Gigantomancer out, or we have our Kiki Jiki out. Being able to give them protection is going to be very important. So our commander being at 4 power is kind of interesting. It puts our commander on the cusp of the power-based draw effects, kind of like Return of the Wild Speaker or Soul's Majesty. I think if your commander's at 4, they're almost good enough and they're worth running because 5 mana for 4 cards is still worth it. But having some of the effects that will bump up the power of our commander so that we can get draw 5 cards with it, maybe 6 cards, because we do have like Rising of the Day, we have Vanquisher's Banner, Rhythm of the Wild, that Gigantomancer. We do have some ways to get our commander power up, so those cards are going to be great because the floor is going to be 4 cards, but the ceiling could be like 7 cards, which is amazing at the 5 mana rate. So we are indeed running all those cards. Rishkar's Expertise is probably my favorite here because you may cast a card with commander mana cost 5 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost after you cast this. So you get to draw a bunch of cards and then put one of them from your hand onto the battlefield. So that 6 mana, basically, it's only going to cost 1 because you're going to be able to cast that 5 mana cost card afterwards. Rishkar's Expertise, absolutely amazing here. I already talked about Soul's Majesty. Again, great. Just draw cards. You can power number target creature you control, which is awesome. But Return of the Wild Speaker does have a problem with our commander's human. So we are running a bunch of elves and some other non-human stuff, some goblins. So Return of the Wild Speaker can work. We do have Gut to make the 4/1 black skeletons. So we do have a lot of things that can get a creature out, like the 5/5 dragons with Dragon Master. So all of these cards are pretty great for that, and we do have enough non-humans for Return of the Wild Speaker to actually work, which you love to see. And then Shamanic Revelation, our commander, does have 4 power, so we get to gain at least 4 life with this whenever we cast it. But we're probably aiming for 12 to 16 life with Shamanic Revelation, because that's over a third of your life total, which will help you win the game. I've seen Shamanic Revelations for 12 or 16 that really help turn the tide and help someone win. So that amount of life gain is very helpful. And then Classic Harmonize, 4 mana for 3 cards. It's just great to refill your hand sometimes. And in green, 4 mana for 3 cards is worth it. And then the last few draw pieces here that aren't Shaman. Colossal Majesty, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control creature power 4 or greater, our commander, you have to draw a card. So in this deck, this is just going to act like a Phyrexian Arena, which is still a very good draw engine in commander. And it's Colossal Majesty is just another one of those that's just going to help you keep your hand full and help you hit all of your shaman you need to put on the board. And when you get those shaman with Vanquisher's Banner or Guardian Project, when you cast them or whenever they enter the battlefield, you get to draw cards. So Vanquisher's Banner Guardian Project here, helping you draw a bunch of cards, helping all of your Shaman turn into cantrips is exactly what you want. So because we're in red-green, we get access to Green's ramp, and Green's ramp amazing. Also, this is Millie, in case you haven't seen her in the other videos. She's the bestest dog in the whole wide world. Yes, you are. And so with having Gruul ramp, oh, you love to see it, especially because we get to run Goblin and Archomancer, another one of my favorite cards. But we also get the rampant growths and the nature's lore and all that kind of stuff, and we also get mana dorks, which I'm not huge on mana dorks because one board wipe and then you've lost a ton of your mana production. But they do help out, especially when you can turn them into attackers and stuff, get them a little bigger with counters and whatnot. They can draw cards, they can cantrip, so that part of it's not bad, but I'm more in it for the land ramp. But my favorite ramp card in this deck has to be Leyline of Abundance. It makes all of our mana dorks tap for an additional green mana, so if it's in our opening hand, we get to drop it into the battlefield for free, which is awesome, and then it'll make our commander tap for 2 generic and a green. So that's pretty cool, but we can then spend 8 mana and put a 1/1 counter on each creature we control. So it helps us ramp with giving our commander 1 additional mana per tap, and then it also has a mana sink. Leyline of Abundance is a very cool card. I'm a huge fan of it. And it giving a pump to our entire board whenever we put 8 mana into it is awesome. It'll get our commander bigger for effects like Soul's Majesty and stuff like that. It'll also get our creatures bigger for being able to hit for damage and stuff. To be able to block more efficiently, tank some more removal-y, like damaging removal effects. Yeah, Leyline of Abundance here is a great card. And with cards like Sol Ring, it'll be a lot easier to activate that ability. And then we have the classic 2 mana ramp. You've seen all these in all my other videos that have green decks in them just because I love them so much. They're all so strong, and they're just so powerful, especially with 3 visits and Nature's Lore being able to get a forest on the battlefield untapped. Sometimes you're going to go get a basic forest, and that's good enough because they'll only cost 1 mana because you get one of those mana back, which is absolutely amazing. If you have 3 mana up and a Nature's Lore and a 3 visits in hand, you can tap 2 mana, go get an untapped forest, and then tap that new forest and the other land to activate to cast your rampant growth or another 3 visits or a Farseek or something like that. Yeah, these cards are absolutely incredible. So you did already see a bunch of removal from our Shaman, but that wasn't enough, so I found some other removal that I really like. Red and green have some great removal, some of my favorite pieces, honestly, and I'm about to go over those now. So these are the pure artifact and enchant rune removal. Return to Nature can exile a card from a graveyard, and I have used that a few times as like a silver bullet to be able to hit something really important in a graveyard. Maybe someone's recurring something a bunch. But the best card out of all of them here, yes, Vandal Blast is great, but Hull Breach is a 2 mana 2-for-1. I've played Hull Breach a bunch of times now, and I have never seen Hull Breach not hit 2 targets. Because what you'll do is you'll target 2 different players, and one player isn't just going to sacrifice their artifact so that the other person gets to keep their enchantment. That doesn't happen. So for 2 mana, you get to blow up 2 things, which is insane. Like, the value here is incredible. Normally this would suck because if you are playing one-on-one and you target an artifact and enchantment on one person's board, and then they sacrifice the less bad one, or they sacrifice the one that is just not as good, then the whole spell fizzles. So you don't get to hit the target you actually care about. But people aren't going to do that in a multiplayer format. You just get to hit 2 things. You could hit 2 Soul Rings. You could hit a Guardian Project and a Bolas's Citadel. But, like, the Hull Breach is awesome. It being sorcery does suck. Instant speed would probably be broken. But it's still just a very good card and very versatile because of the 3 different modes. And then for the more versatile removal, Beast Within can hit anything and replace it with a 3/3, and I've never had that 3/3 be more than an issue than the thing you're killing, or really be an issue ever. Yes, it makes a blocker or like a semi-decent attacker, but you're always hitting something way more valuable, and the fact that it's also an instant, yeah, Beast Within is kind of great for that reason. A Braid can deal 3 damage to target creature or destroy an artifact, so hitting creatures and artifacts is a great modality there. And the fact that a lot of stuff does have toughness 3 or less, a Braid is a great little lightning bolt to creatures that can also blow up a bullet sill or something. And again, it being instant speed, you can hold it up and do it on your opponent's turn, which is fantastic. And then finally, Atrax's Fall. Destroy target artifact, battle, enchantment, or creature with flying. The fact this has 4 different targets is kind of ridiculous. Yes, it's at sorcery speed, so you do have to be careful about that. But it hitting flyers is so important because this deck can't really deal with flyers that well. So if someone has some giant 15/15 flyer like a Shabraz or an Ojutai, Atrax's Fall can really help deal with something like that. And for the wipes, you already saw that card. It's Vandal Blast. The card is incredible. It just does so many things. Being 1 mana destroy an artifact, that's already a great rate. But then 5 mana blow up all artifacts you don't control is also just back-breaking for some decks. Vandal Blast hoses artifact decks in the best way possible. It keeps all of your stuff around. 1 mana early turns, you can hit a Soul Ring with it, which I've seen happen and is very mean. But yeah, just Vandal Blast, the modality like Cyclonic Rift is kind of insane. And yeah, overloaded Vandal Blasts hit hard and they really hose a lot of decks, which is exactly what you want to see from an aggro deck that might be getting stomped by a control deck. Getting rid of all of their mana producing artifacts to really slow them down is exactly what you want. Not running anything crazy for the lands here. A couple kind of interesting ones because our commander has his power at 4 and his toughness at 4, so some lands do care about that. And because we're running a Typal deck or a Kindred deck, we get to run some lands that care about that stuff as well, which kind of help with mana fixing and just let us run a slightly more interesting mana base. So Bonder's Enclave cares we have a creature power 4 or greater and then lets us draw a card, so our commander fills that, but also our commander will pay for 2 of Bonder's Enclave's 4 mana. It says 3 on it, but you have to tap it, so basically it costs 4. So our commander plus 2 plus Bonder's Enclave and 1 more land, draw a card. That's not bad. Tirade Sanctum, we can use our commander to tap Tirade Sanctum to put a 1/1 counter on our commander, make them a god, which making them bigger will help with Soul's Majesty, risk cards, expertise, that kind of thing. Castle Garenbrig, our commander can also help pay for the mana for that, which turns tapping 5 mana to get 6 into tapping our commander and 3 to get 6. So it'll help clear some of our lands up for that. Castle Garenbrig is a great card, helps you get a ton of green mana for dealing with those green pips. Rootbound Crag, and as battlefield, tap unless you control a mountain or a forest, which there's enough basic land fetching with rampant growth and stuff like that. Or we have our Nature's Lore so that we're able to get our forests out, so this will enter untapped, which is nice. Secluded Courtyard, another land that cares about typal stuff like unclaimed territory, so that's just great to have in here for the color fixing. And then Spire Garden, Wizards, please put the Battle Bond lands in all of the commander products. That means the sets and the precons. They are designed for multiplayer products and multiplayer play, so please put them in the multiplayer format products. Thank you very much. I had quite a difficult time making cuts for this deck, honestly. Getting it down to 30 Shaman was quite hard. There was a lot of different Shaman I wanted to keep in because they were cool or did interesting effects, but at the end of the day, getting it to that number is kind of where I want it. I was debating between 30 and 35, and maybe 35 would have been nice, but there was enough of the other cards that I kind of wanted to put in, like Harmonic Prodigy and Seeker, the other creature in the deck that isn't a Shaman but can untap creatures, as well as some other stuff like ramp, removal, whatever. So because of that, getting it to 35 would have been really hard, and I feel like the deck would have had to suffer in some other ways. And a lot of the Shaman in the deck currently do fill multiple roles in being a Shaman and removal, or their ramp, or whatever. So I'm happy with the selection, but it was difficult to get it to here. So these are some of the Shamans that I cut from the deck as some other cards. Vexing Shusher, a spell can't be countered, and then you can pay a hybrid Gruul, and target spell can't be countered. This is more for like Storm decks or like if you're spell slingy decks. I've never seen Vexing Shusher played because I've just never seen a deck where you really need that much protection, where you're willing to spend 1 extra mana to make spells uncounterable. I don't know. Maybe there's a lot of decks that could see this played more. I could maybe see this being played in a Slime Against Humanity deck or a Dragon's Approach deck, being able to protect them so you can actually get your slimes out or actually deal the damage. Those might be pretty helpful, but it didn't seem super useful here because no one of the Shaman are really that. I mean, Gigantomancer's pretty strong and Kiki Jiki's pretty strong, but not all of the shaman are strong enough that this is going to be useful all the time, and I'd rather just have a more stronger protection piece like a Rhythm of the Wild that just gives all of them uncounterable without having to pay the mana. Rage Forger, it's an Anthem, but when it enters the battlefield, you put a 1/1 counter on each other shaman you control, and then whenever creature you control the 1/1 counter on attacks, you may have to deal 1 damage to the target player. So it lets your shaman deal more damage, it gives them 1/1 counters, it's great, but it only does it once. Yes, we do have stuff that can bounce it so that you can activate it again, but I didn't feel like that was strong enough. Maybe it is, maybe that's good enough effect to be worth running, but I don't know. I just didn't like it, and I would rather have the other Anthem effects a little more permanent. You don't have to worry about when stuff entered. Also, the fact that this cares about when stuff entered, keeping track of all of those different dice can be annoying. I started cutting Cathar's Crusade from all of my decks because keeping track of which creatures are how big all over the place is quite frustrating. And then finally, Leaf Crown Elder. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may look at the top card of your library. If it shares a creature type with Leaf Crown Elder, you may reveal it. If you do, you may play that card without paying its mana cost. It's a lot like Realm Walker, where you get to, like, 1/3 of the time, it'll just cast a shaman from the top of your library for free. But it is 4 mana, where Realm Walker's 3 mana, and I just like the ability to be able to choose if I want to cast it from the top of my library, and like have more like a timing, which you get to choose the timing. So with Realm Walker, I could do it during main phase 1, main phase 2. I get to look at the top card of my library whenever, so I get to see what's coming up. I just prefer that. And then Tribute to the World Tree, little expensive at the $15 price point. It's a little annoying how expensive this card is. I wish it'd get reprinted a bunch and get a little cheaper, because it is a very strong card, and it's awesome to see cards like this because it makes all of your 1/1s and 2/2s into 3/3s, and then everything else draws you cards, which is fantastic. Actually makes our 2/2s into 4/4s. My bad. Yeah, Tribute to the World Tree is kind of wild. And then finally, Cathartic Pyre. It has the modality to discard 2, draw 2, or deal 3 damage to our creature or player. Between this and Abrade, I just think Abrade's better. It being a 2 mana Faithless Looting or a 2 mana kind of Lightning Bolt is great and all, but yeah, I just rather have the Abrade where I can hit a creature or hit an artifact versus hit a creature or planeswalker or do the loot thing. And then lastly, I did end up cutting Skyshroud Claim and Kodama's Reach, as well as Cultivate and Ranger's Path. There's just enough ramp in the deck among the 2 mana ramp spells and then all of our shaman that we didn't need the 3 and 4 mana ones. Mana Reflection is a card I really considered putting in here because whenever you tap permanent for mana, it produces twice as much mana instead. So Mana Reflection would make our commander tap for 4, and then a bunch of other stuff tap for more mana, which would be great, but Mana Reflection is kind of an expensive card, so I ended up cutting it for that reason. But if you're going to make this deck, I highly recommend putting Mana Reflection in because it works so well with the commander. Garruk's Uprising, another great card. If the average power of the deck was quite a bit higher to when we'd be constantly proccing the draw trigger on Garruk's Uprising, I would be super happy with it. But you won't be proccing it as much as you'd want to, so I cut it for that reason. And then Gleeful Sabotage, really interesting. Destroy target artifact or enchantment, and then it has Conspire. Conspire is a cool mechanic where you get to tap 2 untapped creatures you control that share a color with the spell, then you get to copy the spell. Famously on Wart the Raid Mother, giving all of your instants and sorceries Conspire, and then when she enters the battlefield, she gives you 2 red-green goblins to help you conspire all of your instants and sorceries. It's a really cool card. I was thinking about adding it, but at the end of the day, I'd rather just have Return to Nature, because the ability to exile the one thing from the graveyard, I think that's better here. Gleeful Sabotage, it being a 2-for-1, but it does get rid of 2 blockers. It's sorcery speed. Yeah, it's close, but I don't know. I could easily see Gleeful Sabotage being swapped out for a Return to Nature. So that's the deck. Let me know what you think. I'm very happy with it. I think I did a very good job considering the commander is a 5 mana Soul Ring with Summoning Sickness. So because of that, there isn't a lot of build space to create something absolutely wild, but I found a lot of Shaman I was super interested in that seemed very cool. Especially got Gigantomancer. That card's awesome. And then Elvish Piper, I got to put in one of my favorite cards, that being Goblin and Archomancer, and then Harmonic Prodigy. So I got to fit in a lot of cards I'm really happy with. So yeah, let me know what you think. Would you run something like this? Have you built something like this? If you're going to build like Shaman Tribal, let me know if there's a different commander that you would choose. These are all my socials. Twitter is where I post when these videos go live, so follow me on there if you don't want to miss any videos. I'll eventually start making content for TikTok, which I would then cross-post to Reddit. And then Architect and Moxfield are where all of these deck lists live. So thank you so much for watching. And as always, get building, splainers. Alright, that is so